Hi, and welcome back to the NexGen HealthTech podcast, where we sit down with thinkers, builders, doers, redefining what healthcare looks like in the real world. We don't do buzzwords, we do what's actually working in the ground. So today we're joined by Julien, a key member of the team of Synapse Medicine, a health tech company on a mission to make medical knowledge more accessible, accurate, and actionable for everyone. Julien brings a deep experience at the intersection of clinical workflows, AI, and product development. So at Synapse, he's helping lead the charge in transforming how we think about medication, safety, prescription assistance, and data reliability, especially in high-stakes healthcare environments. And him and his team are solving the kind of challenges that most startups avoid. So it's great to have you, Julien. And a quick just note here before we kick off: if you haven't liked or subscribed to the podcast, please support us and helping us make more videos like these. So Julien, great to have you. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you. So can you briefly introduce yourself and your role at Synapse Medicine? Would be a great start, I think, for everyone and our listeners.
For sure, yes. So hello everybody. I'm very happy to be here to talk with you about AI and what we can do in medicine and health tech. So I'm Julien. I'm head of AI at Synapse Medicine. So I'm in charge of building and deploying the vision we have of what we think can AI tools can bring to our users of today and also of tomorrow, in a few words.
Great. And what inspired the creation of Synapse Medicine? How did you get involved? What is the mission there? That would be really interesting to hear.
Yeah, sure. So as you may know, medical knowledge is a very vast domain, constantly evolving and increasing. It's not super easy to access to it, even for healthcare professionals. So the original idea was to try to make it available at to make the good level of information about drugs available to the good people, being healthcare professionals or maybe patient too, to make them able to take the best decision for each patient. So the company was created like 8 years ago now by 2 doctors and 1 engineer. And I reached the adventure pretty soon because it was just 7 years ago. And now we've been growing a lot. So that's
really interesting. And Synapse aims to make reliable medication information accessible to all in a world drowning in data. And how do you ensure trust, relevance, and speed in this direction?
Yeah, I would say that there is one, to my point of view, there is one very important thing is to keep the human in the loop. So that's maybe a bit weird for someone working in AI, but what we do, the doctor takes all the decisions and also all the responsibilities. And so we have to be able to give him the best information with the corresponding rationale and sources for him to take the good decision. So that's a first answer to that question. And at the very beginning of Synapse, we tried to structure automatically the knowledge about drugs because it's very often contained in raw text and all that, only using algorithms. But in fact, there is no room for errors in that field because it can have dramatic impacts on patients. So again, we think that even in this way to construct the information and to parse all that document, we think that we also need to have experts at the end to validate, at least for the most complex tasks, to reach the required high level of quality. So I would say that it's super important to keep the human in the loop in what we do.
Absolutely. I think there's that fine balance between technology and the people behind it, which are guiding it and directing it. So completely agree there. And what would you say the biggest problem is in the current prescription and medical decision-making workflows that you're solving at the moment at Synapse?
Yeah, so we'll see that a little bit later when I show you a little bit what we do. But I would say that there are 2 main tracks today. The first one is the way we help people to build and secure the prescriptions. So, for instance, we provide them with smart search bars and autocomplete functions to be able to input medications or pathologies or all that kind of stuff, which is not always very easy in the existing softwares. And we try to provide them with alerts regarding the potential issues that are caused by the medications they want to prescribe. And the important thing on that point is to try to avoid the alert fatigue, what we call being too big number of alerts that sometimes they end by ignoring because if they spend too much time checking alerts. So you have to provide them with the good level of alert, which is not super easy to do. So that's the first track on the way they construct and they secure their prescriptions. And there is also what we call now the Copilot suite, which is generally AI-powered features to assist doctors and try to save their time and make them efficient on more proactive tasks. So it's more, in the first one is, okay, we raise alerts and we say, okay, there is maybe something that is bad or wrong in the prescription. And in Copilot, we go a step further, trying to propose solutions, to propose next actions and all that. So yes, for me, it's the way we can present it.
Really interesting. And could you walk us through briefly through Synapse core products and what your primary users are?
Exactly.
Would be really interesting to see a little bit more of what the magic is behind the technology.
There is no magic, for sure. I will show you a little bit a demo page, maybe to make it more easy to understand. What we do at Synapse, we sell components, being front-end components, we call that widgets. So that's what you should see at the screen normally. Yep. We also sell APIs for people who want to integrate directly APIs. So sorry in advance, that's the French version because that's the version on which we have the most advanced features so far. But I will try to voice it a little bit. So all you can see here are just features, yes, widgets that our clients who are software editors can integrate in their tools, their prescription tools, for different purposes. For instance, here you have a search bar, so you can look for drugs, and there is a smart auto-completion. And then you can also import a prescription through your camera, for instance, or by raw documents. Here is a first Copilot feature, which is an audio assistant that will listen during the patient interview and take notes about it, possibly structurate information from these notes and fill some structured field of the software, for instance, the drugs or the pathologies and so on. I won't comment all the widget, but as you can see, we have something like 15 or 16 different widgets, being either input search bar essentially or display. So this is the prescription display. So that's the widget on which the prescriber can see the drugs he entered in the prescriptions. And at the end, you can see, for instance, the analysis. So this is an alert regarding an issue caused by this drug regarding some specific indication regarding the patient profile. We also look at the interactions, the dosage, the overdosage, and all this kind of stuff. And what I wanted to show you is another more AI feature, which is what we call Copilot Follow. Mm-hmm. This is a feature that takes all the information from the pathologies, the comorbidities that are in the patient profile. It looks also at the drugs that are in the prescription. And regarding all these informations, it will look for follow-up guidelines to explain, for instance, you have prescribed this drug, so you have to think that in 2 weeks you have to prescribe this analysis for the blood rate of I don't know what.
Yeah.
Or all this stuff. So normally it should work. So okay, so it gathers information from distinct sources and make a structured output, giving all the things that you have to think about regarding this patient. It can also generate prescription for the follow-up. It can also generate, for instance, the guidelines for the patient. Maybe he has to stop smoking because you have started this medication which is not compatible with tobacco or I don't know what. So yes, that's what I called the more proactive kind of features that we can do. I won't go more into details, but if you have some questions about that, happy to.
Yeah, it would be interesting. What would be the main? From what I see, this could be used from a wide variety of clinicians, physicians, doctors, exactly. Nurses as well, perhaps. So, what are generally, I would say, the main users of the platform? That would be interesting to hear, I think.
Yeah. Your feeling is good about the wide variety of people that can use that. Today, we work with all kinds of healthcare professionals that can interact with a prescription, being doctors of all kinds, even dentists, nurses also. We also develop products for pharmacists. And we also have an app for patients if they want to screen to check their medications. So that's a bit tricky because they don't really have the level of knowledge that is needed to take decisions. So we generally tell them, well, you have to call your doctor and show him what we. But yes, we address all these this kind of end users.
Okay, really, really interesting. So, yeah, I think great view of the platform. It's really interesting. And if anyone is interested, please feel free. We'll leave links at the episodes and afterwards to get in touch with Julien if you're more interested into how this technology works, where it's applicable. If you just want to get in touch with them, we will definitely leave some contact information. But I think one really interesting topic to follow up on this is, why do you think AI, it's working with the medical knowledge? It's so challenging, especially from a data and AI standpoint. So how do you view AI really integrating within this landscape?
So for me, the important thing is that I don't care about if we do AI or anything else. I always start from a problem. So I like to talk with physicians, with doctors, with people from we have user research teams at Synapse. We have medical team at Synapse. So yes, for me, the very first problem is what's the need, what's the user need? And if in the way we think we can answer it, there is AI, I'm happy because that's my job. But if there are much more straightforward ways to answer the question, I am also happy because AI comes with also its own problems. I'm not sure it answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. And usually medical data, it's very fragmented, it's raw. And how does your tech structure interpret and act on it reliably? I think this is one key thing that we've even had discussions with previous guests on the podcast, is we've talked a lot about this raw and fragmented data where different regions, different companies handle it in a very, very different way. How is it on your side?
Sure, that's a big problem for us. And that's also something that's we're working on for a very long time. So yes, medical data is heterogeneous. We work with structured databases, with raw text, with images, with audio. So from a data science point of view, it's very interesting, but you have many things to do on that. Another problem we have is that there is no perfect terminology. There are no very good standards that everybody uses. So for instance, we generally need to make links between molecules, and there are some terminologies about molecules, but there is no one that covers all our needs. So we have to maintain our own terminologies for drugs, for instance, and to make bindings with all the other terminologies. So there is a huge work on aligning the sources. That's the same for pathologies. For instance, there are several standards for pathologies, but they don't agree with each other, so you have to conciliate all that. So that's another big problem of data, healthcare data. And there is, as I said at the beginning, there is no room for errors. So it's a little bit contradictory with probabilistic approaches, because we always go with a rate of error or F1 measure or whatever you want. So one of our main and historical research topic at Synapse is the design and the implementation of a huge international drug knowledge base. So the first thing we wanted to do is to make sure that all the concepts we want to manipulate, they can fit in a single model. When I say all the concepts, I mean all the concepts regarding drugs. So yes, what is a branded drug? What is a virtual drug? What are molecules? How molecules do interact between together? What are the pathologies? How we can define them, model them? What is an adverse effect? What are drug-drug interactions? All that we have to model it. So that's what we call an ontology. And this ontology must be compliant with all the countries, because there is one, I would say, a core layer, which is, okay, chemistry is the same in every country. So acetaminophen is the same in every country. But the drugs you buy at the pharmacy, they are not the same in every country. The dosage are not the same. Some molecules are used in some countries and not in others. So you are all this country-specific layer also. And all that is quite complex.
Yeah, and a lot of data to handle, for sure.
Exactly. The first thing is to build this ontology, the way you represent the data. And once you have this model, it's very cool, but you have to instantiate it. You have to put real data in that. And again, you have this problem of most of the data is contained in raw text documents, and you have to structure it. So that's one of the main topics we're working on. That's very important for the reliability of our solutions, because if the data we rely on is not good, well, the products won't be good.
Yeah, and then you also have one thing that comes in mind is also you have these like always new drugs that are coming up. It might be the same type of drug, for example, like aspirin or something like this, but it might have something additional, like you mentioned, as a molecule. It might be aspirin plus vitamin C or plus vitamin D or something. So always you have these also new drugs coming in, which might be very similar, but with slight differences, which would actually make a change. You need to also update whatever you've created so far as a database. And I think that's also quite challenging.
Exactly. From a point of view, from a technical point of view, there is a lot of data engineering work to run complex parsing, to align the sources, and to make sure that we construct the data every day. So we have sources that move every day, and there is a lot of testing also on top of that to make sure that we don't kill the database.
Yeah.
Before releasing into production. So yes, there is a big machinery behind all that to make sure it works.
Really interesting. And how does Synapse, I think this is one more interesting question, is how does Synapse use AI to semi-automate prescriptions? This is something that I think could be quite interesting.
Yes, so, we do that a little bit like the rest of what we do. So we try to use reliable sources, and we also try to take the best of the multidisciplinary approaches we can have, because we have a great product team, we have a great data team. We also work with a medical team with pharmacists and doctors. So all that is very important. And the other point is that we evaluate at each step of the development. We have worked a lot on the methodology around how we can build reliable tools and how we can make them evolve in the time. So that's the first generic point. I would say that in what I showed you just a little bit before, there are already some features that automates the flow before and after the prescription itself with the Copilot audio, so the audio assistant that takes the notes and all that, and the very last features I demoed, the Pilot Follow, which gives you all the follow-up guidelines. Regarding the prescription, the act of prescribing itself, we are just at the beginning of the work on that topic. But what we can see so far is that when we give access to our knowledge graph, our big knowledge base, to advanced AI technologies such as LLMs or agents or all that stuff, it gives very promising proofs of concept. So I don't have anything to show you today, but we're on the topic. We work hard on that, and
in a couple of months in the next episode, probably.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. And is there any measurable outcomes that you can share with us? For example, something like time saved, error reduction, some kind of benefits from implementing this technology?
And so what we try to do at Synapse is to evaluate all our solutions with clinical trial or at least clinical evaluations. Mm-hmm. On the AI tools, it's a bit too early because it's not been deployed at a large scale so far. So I don't really have quantitative clues so far, but for sure it's in our plan to make real life evaluations regarding our user logs, for instance, and also clinical evaluations are planned for probably next year now. So
okay. So yeah, that will be for maybe the third episode.
Yeah, maybe.
So in terms of, I think this is, we also touched on this in one of the last episodes, the topic of safety, which is always, I think when it comes to AI and technology, it's a big topic. So, we have these AI hallucinations, which are a very hot topic at the moment. How does Synapse prevent them, and when the cost of error could be life-threatening in some cases, like prescribing the perfect drug or not combining that with another, depending on the patient's diagnosis and his condition? How do you approach that topic?
So, as I said at the very beginning, I think that it's very hard to reach the zero error rate, and we don't claim that. So the first thing is to be able to explain the user what he has between his hands and to make sure he understands that, okay, this is AI. this is reliable, and after I will explain what we do to make it as reliable as possible. But at the end, it's the doctor that makes the prescription, so he has to be aware of all that. So I think the first and the best way to prevent the error is, again, to have a human in the loop. It would be very dangerous to claim that we prescribe instead of the doctor, and that's absolutely not what we do. But the first thing is that we can use the best quality sources as we can within our including our knowledge graph. And so there is a big effort made on the selection of the sources. There is also a big effort made on the models and pipelines evaluations. It's pretty hard to build with all the generative AI technologies to build good evaluation pipelines because it's hard to find the good metrics, and we've been working a lot of that. So yes, we build these pipelines to measure the consistency and also if there are hallucinations or not, so to make sure we select the good models, the more reliable models. We also put automatic hallucinations detection functions in so at the runtime, we try to intercept the possible hallucinations. For that, there are several methods. There are very simple methods that work pretty well for some cases. For instance, using dictionaries. You can trigger some alert or just using, because we generally use a very specific vocabulary, so you can trigger some alerts just by using dictionaries. But there are more advanced techniques such as using semantic scores like BERT scores or things like that, or ultimately maybe methods such as LLM as a judge, so you can just ask a model if the information that you are to the user is coherent regarding the question or the source. So there are many ways to do that to limit. Again, there is no zero error. You will miss some hallucinations for sure, but you can limit that as much as possible. And ultimately, I would say that what's very important is to test. And we have a great medical team that tests all the products, all the features. They test a lot that. So the validation is also performed manually because it's not super scalable, but at least for the first iterations of a feature, it's mandatory for us to have this manual test step.
Yeah, absolutely. And how would you say that because when we're speaking about AI, we have new models emerging maybe now on a weekly, daily basis. And how do you stay ahead without compromising on safety, validation, performance? And do you retrain them regularly, or this is? How do you ensure that kind of moving to the new model, retraining it, maintaining compliance while also updating the system itself? How is that workflow going?
So I agree, it's crazy. Every morning when I open my computer, it's like, okay, there is a new model. Again, I think that the important thing is to keep things simple. When I started data science, we were explained that it's super important to build validation pipelines, to build benchmarks, to have good evaluation data sets and good metrics. So every time we start a new project, the first reflection we have is, okay, what would be a good data set? By good data set, I mean a dataset that reflects our use case exactly regarding the distribution of the data we have. So for instance, if it's a feature for generic practitioners, we will try to have data coming from this kind of population. And so a good dataset is very important. And after that, what's the good metrics? So when you do binary classification, it's pretty easy to find what will be a good metric. You look at precision, recall, F1 score. But when you deal with generative AI or summarizing stuff or I don't know what, it comes a little bit more complicated. So as I said before, you can just try to check which method is generating more hallucinations than the other. What's the level of the quality of the language that is provided by the model. So we generally now have like 6 or 7 metrics per use case. And just with that, you build a benchmark. And that's the very first thing we do when we start working on an AI problem. But at the end, it's very useful because we are able to test a new model or a new prompt or a new whatever you want regarding the parameterization of your pipeline within some hours. And we've already had the case of a model we used that was deprecated by the provider. And yeah, it took like 4 hours to check the new one, make sure it's as good as the previous one, and ultimately deploy it in production. So yes, for me, that's the same as before. You have to be methodic and to build this approach. Yeah. And yeah, no, I mean, pretty.
Yeah, so it would definitely, it requires a lot of work, but like you mentioned, if you simplify the process, I think that makes it a lot easier in this very, very dynamic AI world that we're in today. And when we mention this, the other thing that comes to mind is regulatory and clinical validation. It can really slow down innovation in a lot of cases, not just in digital healthcare, but also in other industries. We've seen this also in startups and also in larger companies as well. How do you navigate that tension in terms of regulatory affairs and also clinical validation, because these are really two things that can really slow you down in terms of policies and different types of regulations. How do you handle that?
Yeah, so that's a good point. Many of the features I showed you during the demo are medical devices. So for sure, we can't do everything super easily on that, but that also has very good impact on the way we work, because we built and maintain a team management system for that. We have built also processes that are here to support the way we implement the features, to make sure that we do that the right way. So now it's part of how we work. It's been integrated in the company DNA at the very beginning, and it's not seen as a big constraint. For sure, when we do proof of concepts, we keep that in mind, but we don't get stuck with all that stuff. We start working and trying stuff, and as long as it becomes more concrete, we check that these points. Yes, it's not so hard for us to get compliant.
And you mentioned that internal work. Is there any advice you could give out there for the internal process or philosophies that Synapse works with to help you move fast but not break the chain?
You have to make sure that your processes are good, because as far as I understand the regulatory topics, it should provide you with good ways to work. And if it's more than that, maybe it's too much. So that's one first. And yeah, I mean, it's a culture stuff. If that's something the teams are used to live with for a long time, it does not make big problems. And even sometimes we can hear in the open space, hopefully we've done that the right way, because we could have had some problems, or you have to see that positively, I think.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a lot of cases. Sometimes you just need to have your fingers crossed and hope for the best.
And that's not good.
Yeah.
And even being also a patient, I'm pretty happy that these kind of applications are regulated. So yeah, that's the game.
Absolutely. And what would you say that's next for Synapse Medicine? What's exciting as new features or partnerships on the horizon? What are the new things you would like to share about Synapse, which is happening?
Many things. So we've been working a little bit about how we will try to suggest more about prescriptions itself. So that's a topic I'm working a lot on these days. So I'm very excited about that, and I think the team is very excited too. We are also looking at agent-based models and technologies. We think that it's something very promising to automate many workflows around the prescription and the work of the clinicians. We also worked on some small POCs regarding that, and that's very exciting and promising. And another point of interest for me are the small models, because I keep on being sure that there is a room for these smaller models such as BERT and all these smaller models for very specific tasks. They can provide very good results, and now we can just use the big models to build great data sets and train smaller models. So I would say that we also still have many things to do with these and even small LLMs, the small llamas and all that. I think there is a real challenge to try to make the AI features fast to cheaper by using these models.
Yeah, it's always a question of speed and cost sometimes, especially nowadays.
Yeah, and that's a big problem with LLMs. That in 1 hour you can make a proof of concept that works. So you show that to your product team, and they say, okay, so the feature is coded. Not exactly.
Yeah.
and the the result is trying to explain why we cannot just do that. And I hope I could give some answers to this question today.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a closing remark, if you could fast forward 5 years or 5 to 10 years in the future, how do you envision AI reshaping the clinician's daily routine and also technologies like Synapse? How do you see this changing in the next 5 to 10 years? Where do you see the technology going?
Yeah, To me, it should be like, when you build planes now, there is a co-pilot, but the pilot is still here. He keeps an eye on what happens in the plane, and whenever it's to do something, it takes the commands. I think in 5 years, it could be something like that. So many agents, many AI technologies, many workflow can be automated, but always under the supervision of the doctor. So I would say maybe tomorrow the doctor will be the pilot of all that, and we can provide them with great automation tools to help them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that even though AI is really advancing, I think we always need to keep this balance of like you mentioned a couple of times, humans in the loop, because it's at the end of the day, it's still code, and it's prone to errors. We are as well. I mean, but the combination of both maybe decreases the error. I think always keeping people in the loop is going to be crucial, but if we lean on this direction of relying too much on AI and technology, we might kind of move in the wrong direction. That's at least my opinion. And for a lot of technologies out there, because you could also have presumably cases where you have even doctors saying the AI is going to, for example, I don't know, take a look at this X-ray picture. It will already tell me what I'm going to see anyways, but it might miss something that the doctor could see. So you always have these probabilities of error. And I think relying too much on technology might also go in the wrong direction.
And another risk regarding that is the loss of competence, because and that's something the doctors are afraid of when we perform some research analysis, and they are afraid to not being able to treat patients by themselves, because using too much AI will make them lose their competence. And that's something very interesting, because whenever we build an AI feature, we always see that as also maybe a teaching tool, because we try to explain why we did that. And at the end, we hope that if tomorrow or in 1 year, the same configuration and the same use case, he will maybe remember what the AI explained to him and be able to not to use the AI.
100% agree on this part, because just a couple of days ago, I was reading also on this article where they used MRI imaging on people that significantly use AI on a daily basis. And if they use it as, for example, prompts where they just want to extract some kind of information or write it for them, you could see long-term exposure of this type of usage of decreasing cognitive function. Whereas if you are actually coming up with the idea yourself and then using AI to help you refine it and kind of, just, edit it out or anything like that, you still have that cognitive function. But if you use it in the other way around, long exposure decreases cognitive abilities in the brain. So this is, like you mentioned, it's something to talk about. Even in the last discussion also we were also speaking about that. We also always have to speak about the negative sides of this as well. We're all like, it's a hype now. People are saying like AI is the next thing. This is the future, but we also need to think about also what are the negative impacts, because we need to handle those as well. I think that's something that's not talked about enough. Perfect. So Julien, thank you once again for joining in. A great, amazing discussion. It was really interesting to see how Synapse works and what challenges you're solving. I'm pretty sure we're going to be having more episodes down the line with you when you have some major updates. I'm really happy to follow up. And thank you once again for taking the time and sharing your story as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you guys for listening in, and until next time, thanks.